Welcome, friends. I was going to go ahead and clean out this 1940 Parker Duofold Senior in striped blue material, and I figured why not take you along for the ride, because a lot of you will not have a chance to see this pen being a vintage, and this one's in great condition. So let's break it down first, shall we? So this was made by Parker in 1940 or so, and we can tell because this cap band is smooth. Next up, let's get an imprint on that barrel. So you can see how it says Parker Duofold, made in the USA. Let's get that made in the USA part again. One more thing to note here, that blue in the little diamond there signifies that this one had a lifetime warranty. Under the hood, this pen was earlier than the engravings of the arrow. So this pen predates that. But one of the things that is really cool about this nib is it's a factory stub, and that was uncommon. Most of the pens that you will find from these lines will be closer to fine, medium. You don't see a stub nib come from them often on a pen like this. Get a load of this material in the light too. Wonderful blues and grays. And it's hard to tell here, but the stripes in between the blues and grays are actually translucent. So if you hold it up against a light source, you can actually see your ink level on the inside, which was really neat. This pen I inked up for the Boston Pen People meeting, and I've written a couple letters with it, and I don't intend, I've just got too many pens inked up right now, so I don't intend on using this one super frequently, which means I don't want to keep it inked up, because that's how things get gummed up over time, right? So I want to try and keep this clean. It's only been inked up for maybe a week or two with good use. So, all right. First thing you do is you're going to go ahead and unspin gently, counterclockwise, to remove that cap. That reveals your vacuum creation mechanism. So this you push down and that creates the vacuum. But what we are going to do is first off prepare your area. Now we have cleaned and prepared our area. I've got a vessel of water, an empty vessel, and I've removed the cap and the end cap as well. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead, put this over a vessel, and just depress that button a couple times. I'll show you like that. There you go. And that's what spits out all the ink. Now I'm going to go ahead, get some water, and just go ahead and soak out that feed. And that's just going to help preserve the cleaner water vessel I do have so it doesn't get inky as fast. Alright, that's good for there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in the water and then suck some up. See how that first press really expelled any liquid that was in there, and then that second press created the vacuum to suck it up. Brilliant. Now one thing I like to do is kind of gently touch the nib down with just the slightest of pressure to kind of open up that pathway for ink to flow, and then I'm going to go ahead and blow air away. And then what that's going to do is the air pressure outside is going to drop, forcing some of that air on the inside to really kind of rinse out this feed. Now check this out. Yeah, look at that. Do be careful when you do this, obviously. You don't want to put too much pressure, but this really helps to get stuck ink out of that feed. Now the reason I'm not blowing into it like this way is because then you're trying to basically push air back up in there, and that's not my goal. I'm blowing away from it to create lower pressure going this way, and that's going to really drive out all that ink. But at this point, that's pretty good. I'm actually going to move to my next water vessel. Little tip for you there, though. Okay, bringing in some clean water. Let's try and just soak that feed, get it a little bit more clean. And now we're going back over. One thing I do like to do as well is kind of dry off this part so you're not getting water unnecessarily places. And then we're going to go ahead and turn this upside down because you want that water that is in there to kind of go down here. and kind of degunk up this area from any ink that might have been up there or dried. So. All right, off screen real quick, I went through 3 more vessels of clean water until this looked like it was running clean. But I'm going to show you a little hack here. If you prepare a vessel like this with dry paper towels, water's tendency to stick to itself, the very purpose and foundation that makes fountain pens work, can work to your advantage here, in that once the water starts pulling, this will just slowly take away everything that's remaining in the feed. And I do this for all my nibs, but great hack on a Vacumatic. Now onto this beautiful cap. What I'm going to do is go ahead and dip my Q-tip in some nice clean water. I'm just going to kind of get the inside damp, and look at all that. A lot of this is dried up, so it's not like when you take the cap off. You saw I took it off and it wasn't leaking on me. But when you do induce some water to the system, it loosens all that dried up ink right away, and you just kind of soak it all up and absorb it. And so that is pretty significant. So I'm just going to keep getting new Q-tips and doing this. Now what you might notice is I'm not using the other side of the Q-tip, and I used to do that, but then, you know, no matter what you do, your fingers will absorb some of this and get extra inky. So at this point, I just sacrifice the other end of the Q-tip. Now you do need to make sure that if the inside of your cap is ebonite or anything like that, you are watching out. There's a milk protein, and those things can absorb water, right? So that's another reason I'm not just dumping water in. If this was a new cap, like if this was something like this, I might just go ahead and dump a little bit of water in here, dump it out. It's not going to really hurt this resin here. However, if this was made of ebonite or another more porous material, it might. So you do need to be careful about inducing any water to caps, especially if they are of a nature that will absorb water. Man, oh man. This is quite the little experiment I got going on here. It's like, how many licks does it get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? I wonder if I do 2 in here, what's going to happen? Okay, I should get rid of some of the water that's just kind of floating around up there in excess. Time for my handy dandy. Man, in all my old vintages, I always see this little hole drilled in one side or both sides. And when I first got them, I was like, I've never seen, no modern pens have holes drilled in them, right? So I've never seen that. And then I got into them, and all of the vintages have that. And I've come to realize it's because they accepted as a fact of life that you would get a little bit of ink in your cap while you were out and about in the hustle and the bustle of your day. So what they did was they just accommodated for that. They put a little hole in each side. You can see this was assembled before because it goes through multiple striations here. Anyway, so this basically just allowed for that pragmatic, like, hey, you're going to get a drop of ink in here. We're just going to go ahead and give it a way to evaporate. So when you do take your cap off, you don't get globs of ink on you. And that was really effective. Nowadays, you know, modern pens don't do that. Yeah, modern pens don't have that. So it's just something interesting to note. But that's probably why I've never had an issue with this thing leaking on me or dripping on me. But now look at all this ink that I'm kind of getting out of this cap. I can't remember the name of it, but that the milk protein one was a really interesting one. That was from like World War II, when other materials were being sourced for the war and you couldn't use other things like ebonite, which is basically a form of rubber, right? So that's all going to airplane tires in World War II. So you can't build more things out of ebonite, which meant that's why you saw a big drastic decrease in ebonite pens and just using the feeds to ebonite. And more companies were using different materials. Anyway, one of them, casein, I think it was called casein. One of them was a milk protein, and it was like the protein that was left over after they made the milk and the cheese and everything like that. They were able to extract those proteins and then solidify them to make pens. They're kind of like a white, off-white, almost vanilla color nowadays if they've aged. But it's a really cool, unique part in pen history, and it's just something to note. Like I was saying, if you do have a case-in pen, or if you have a pen made of ebonite, you want to be very careful because you don't want to put a lot of moisture or water into it because that material can absorb it. What you see happens a lot of times is people do that. They'll put their cap in to soak or something like that, and the whole thing will just kind of swell up, and you can tell because the cap band is almost like squeezing a fat guy, and it no longer fits, and people are like, what just happened? And that's when I stumble upon all these threads of information about kind of this effect, this thing that happens. So this is quite the lengthy cap cleaning. I think that's getting pretty good though. Might be good enough where I'm kind of happy with it. All right, let's get some air in there so you sure you don't get any of these excess fibers from the Q-tips. Cool. Now our cap is pretty good to go. Let's count how many it took, shall we? Look at that little pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. All right, so we took about 27 Q-tips. Well, I guess technically you could have done it in half if you got your fingers inky and used the other sides, but 27 Q-tips to adequately clean that cap, in my opinion. And what time we got? We are going on, let's see, about 12 minutes right now, and we'll check in with our nib. Can you see that? See all that dark blue? Now this part, I'm not going to clean. I'm not going to go put Q-tips in there or anything like that. There's no need. This part doesn't really see ink. Any excess moisture there could go ahead and negatively impact the metals up here and, you know, speed up any sort of rust or anything like that. So, okay, I'm actually going to move the pen to a new spot so that way it can be more absorbent. But look at that. Look at that dark bit right there. That was kind of stuck in the feed that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't do this slow clean method. With two final parting tips, I want to say, first off, a lot of people will be tempted to sit these in sunlight to dry faster. Please do not do that because the UV rays will actually harm the aesthetics and integrity of these components. So please don't sit your pens out in the sunlight. They will degrade them over time. Next up, I want to show you guys another really cool tip. Okay, remember that little bit of patina there / rust? Well, we're going to go ahead and seal that up. What I like to do is use mineral oil, food grade in specific. If you don't know about mineral oil, it's amazing to help seal up any woods or metals. I like food grade because that's what I use to seal up all of my knives after I clean them. And, you know, if I'm going to have a knife, I might use it to cut an apple. So I get food grade oil. You don't have to, but that's something that I would just spend the extra bit because you don't go through. A little drop of this will go a long way, as you'll see. All right, so what we're going to do here is just put a little tiny bit on something of, you know, cloth or fabric. So, you know, a paper towel will work, and you're just going to do a dab. That was actually way too much. And I'm just going to rub this kind of on like that. And that's all you need to do because you'll see it absorbs some. And that's all you're doing is kind of sealing up the exterior from more oxidation or rust, as it's known. So that's all you really have to do to help stem the tide of the inevitable patina and rust that will occur with any sort of metals. So I love mineral oil. I'll give that a little coat again. And now this is that much more sealed for the future generations to preserve. And here we go. That end cap is on. We've already cleaned the cap. What little moisture there is in the system will be able to evaporate because of that pragmatic hole that they put in these vintage pens. So this is set to go into my collection to be preserved for future uses in a well-to-do, easy-to-use, let's go and get up manner. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for learning how to clean out your own vintage Vacumatic, and we will see you soon. And as always, may your journey lead to your own personal Zen.